Ladies, gentlemen, am I often forgotten, but certainly not by me, PvMers. Welcome to the channel and welcome to a different type of video. In this video, I'm going to be going over 5 different tips to help you on your PvM journey. Now, this is aimed at more of a new to intermediate PvMer, so some of these tips might seem redundant for more of the advanced crowd, but maybe there'll be some helpful stuff you can pull in here anyways if you are advanced. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into this video. Real quick before we get into this video, if you'd like to help support the channel, there are channel memberships available and super thanks in the comments. I went ahead and turned these on as additional sources to help support the channel. And if you'd like to see even more video releases in the future, feel free to help support the channel. But anyways, let's get on with this video. So the first tip I have for y'all involves preset and preset management. Now, slot 1 and 2 on your presets, they're the only ones that can be activated by just pressing either 1 or 2 on your keyboard. Any of the other ones like 3 through 9, or if you mouse over for 10 and 15 by clicking this one. And if you are on this set and you know how to get back, you just click back. You click the same button to get back. 1 and 2 I consider the active slots because 2 I can just press on my keyboard. This loads up my banking preset, and then if I press 1, I just use that as my active preset. Now this has happened to be a very cursed Glaycore preset, but just ignore that. We're not going to be talking about that in this video. And the main tip here is to just keep your presets organized. I will always keep slot 2 as a bank preset. I keep slot 3 for a rune pouch setup, and these two kind of just always stay here. And then 4 through basically anything else, whatever boss or activity that I'm doing, I will just click on the preset, make sure it's the right one, drag and drop over to slot 1, and then press 1 and it loads the preset for me. So you can set this up just before a boss hour. Now, if you want to know how to do presets, all you do is get the gear how you want it, pull things out from your armor tab or whatever and fill out your preset how you want it organized, and then simply go over to the preset that you want to save it over. The blank ones I will just keep blank and then label as preset, and then you hit the overwrite button, and then everything will say, all your gear and whatnot will save. And then you can just hit this down arrow over here and then pick a name that fits the preset you've described. I usually just go by the boss name. Some people like to do meme names or just go by numbers, just depends on how you remember the preset. Now, one more mini tip, I guess you could call it, it's just a continuation of presets, and that is for my banking preset, I just keep essentials for PvM in here, like different potions or sticks, powders and whatnot, and familiar choice. I also keep skill capes in here for selecting my spellbook, my archaeology relics, and sometimes if I want to go get a slayer task, I'll keep that in here, reaper task, things like that. And then in a separate quote-unquote bank preset, I have my rune pouches with all of the runes corresponding to each of the pouch, and I also keep my quivers with the arrows next to them that they go in. So if I need to refill ammo for some reason, I can go ahead and just do that in this preset or refill my rune pouches. And I try to keep that separate because we only have 28 inventory slots to deal with. So I just keep these for like more essential stuff, and then I have a separate preset for refilling runes and whatnot. Alrighty, so tip number 2 is going to be talking about supply usage, which is just basically talking about like food items and potions and all of this sort of good stuff. Now, the main tip that I have here, I've talked about this before in a different video and kind of more of a expanded view, but basically the short version of it is do not stress too much about input versus output costs. Meaning, don't sit here and stress to make sure that you're using the cheapest food variants possible. Just use what supplies you need to go and do the boss. Now, this doesn't mean go waste GP deliberately at a boss that doesn't need it. Like, if you're doing Giant Mole, you don't need to bring an inventory of Super Sarahs or a bunch of Primal Feasts. That's just completely unnecessary for the boss. But if you're doing a relatively high-end boss, like we'll just take my Zuck preset, for example, I do bring Super Brews and I bring some portions and a Primal Feast, and it allows me to get through the kill relatively unscathed. And that is also going to be the main tip here, is that I would just go ahead and bring the highest brew that you really need. So if you can get away with normal brews, go for it. They are quite a bit cheaper than supers, but the extra 300 per heal is nice. And what I would typically recommend is I honestly start off with supers at any new boss that I'm learning, and then once I'm comfortable with the place, I will either downgrade to regular regular brews, or sometimes even downgrade to super Guthics or regular Guthics rest. These ones don't have the stat drain, so if you're trying to go speedy, you don't have to wait for overload to refresh your stats every 15 seconds. These will never drain your stats, and you're always at the higher level, always doing maximum damage. And then the whole concept of killing the boss before it kills you come into play and whatnot. But honestly, don't worry too much about spending the minimum amount of GP possible. Go ahead and use the blue blubbers. They're going to help you out. Now that is going to kind of bring us into tip number 3, where I'm going to say go ahead and use blubbers or non-adrenaline draining food in general when you can. For most bosses in RuneScape, you don't really need to be using the big heals that solid foods offer, like sailfish or rocktail. Most encounters are not going to require it. The only places I can think of where you actually are going to use solid food is high enraged Telos. That is the one place where most people I don't think are using blubbers. However, with current necromancy builds, I have seen people using super Guthics rest and blue blubbers, so what do I know? And the only other place that I actually do use solids is at Zuck, because the big heal is nice once in a while when you need it in a pinch, but other than that, I'm usually just sipping on brews to maintain HP. And again, that falls under the concept of killing the boss before it kills you, because if you kill the boss faster, that is a less number of auto attacks and or special attacks that the boss can get out, meaning that is less damage you take. Therefore, trying to draw out a fight through food usage and or tanking a boss and doing lower DPM usually is not going to work out. It's kind of a law of diminishing return, at least at most normal bosses. I'm not talking about for fringe cases like soloing hard mode Rago or doing things like that. I'm talking for general purpose bossing like Raksha or the Elite Dungeon series, or anything kind of in that skill level. Or Gladecore at most enrages could be tossed in this. Most bosses in RuneScape you can get away just fine with just using blubbers and some form of brew or Guthics rest. Tip number 4 might come across as something that is kind of a given and is very simple and is kind of a duh, car guy, why are you even talking about this? But it is also important because I still find myself doing this. And that tip is to stop staring at your action bar 24/7. I am guilty of catching myself looking at my action bar longer than needed for ability cooldowns and whatnot. But when you're PvMing, you are going to be attacking a boss that is going to be doing certain animations or movements or other things like that that you need to pay attention to. So that way you can adequately adjust either your rotations or your overhead prayer or your player position accordingly. And when you're staring down at your action bar, the boss that you're fighting is going to be in your peripheral, and that's when you are more likely to make a mistake because it's in your peripheral vision and it's not in your primary focus. Now, it's okay to look at your action bar, and what I would suggest is have it in a place where it's always the same, have it in the same position as always. It can be on pretty much anywhere in your screen. However, the closer it is to the boss that you're fighting, the better off it's most likely going to be. Now, personally, I like having my combat target up here in the right, so that way when I'm fighting a boss, I just quickly glance over, see HP numbers or see buffs and debuffs, and then my actual buffs and debuffs are also in this corner over here. Now, it would probably make more sense to have my ability bars up here since that's where I like to look for things, but they've always been in the center for me and I've just gotten used to looking down if I need to check that, or checking over here, which I probably do more often than not, which is checking these general areas, but my general focus will always stay on the boss itself and what the boss is doing, rather than staring at my ability bar for a rotation that I am inputting. Now, I understand that this sounds very difficult to keeping your focus on something, and that just comes with experience in playing this game over time and just getting used to it. RuneScape is a game that is about acquiring multiple different skill sets and then applying those skill sets simultaneously. And that leads us perfectly into tip number 5, which is dying at bosses is going to happen, and it happens a lot. I myself still die all the time at bosses. It is a part of PvM because we are imperfect humans and we will make mistakes. As you can see right here, I think I reset this damage thing maybe a week or so ago, maybe 2 weeks ago max, and I'm already back up to 66 deaths. I would say on average, I probably die to bosses about 100 times a month. That seems to be my average. And honestly, that is a good thing, because if you are dying to a boss, that means you are pushing yourself beyond your comfort zone to then improve your skill sets and get better at the game. And if you never push yourself outside of your comfort zone, then you're not going to improve. Because as we know, falling over to a boss and appearing in Death's office is one of the best lessons you can ever have in this game of knowing what not to do next time. But overall, yes, death is going to be a part of the PvM experience. That is exactly what happens at bosses. We make mistakes, we learn from them, and then we move on. Anyways, this is a different type of video. I don't normally make these. This is actually my first one doing this. If you would like to see more like it and have more PvM tips, maybe with a specific boss in mind or a specific topic in mind, feel free to leave it in the comments below and I will go ahead and work on something like that. But I hope you found this video helpful and maybe even learned something from it. But without further rambling, let's go ahead and roll that outro. Ladies, gentlemen, and I did not forget about you PvMers. Thank you very much for watching. Your viewership is greatly appreciated. Have a wonderful morning, evening, afternoon, nighttime, whatever it is, wherever you are, and I will see you next time for the next video. Peace.